Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, anyways, I thought that I would review this little video by this one channel called Boxing Ego because I thought that this conversation was particularly interesting. This is somewhat going to entail the conversation that I also released as of yesterday when I reviewed a video by that of Blue Blood Sports TV. I thought that the Blue Blood Sports TV conversation was very, very interesting, and I thought that Blue Blood Sports TV actually was very somewhat decently logical and objective with some of his information. But anyways, when it comes down to it, today we're going to be reviewing a video by Mr. Boxing Ego. We all know that he is a part of the movement called New Media, and we know basically what some of their main objectives are, especially when it comes to Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. Now, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez, basically what they try to allege about his career is that he does a great amount of maneuvering, and basically he only fights the weakest links, and yada, 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 yada. And I believe that Saul Canelo Alvarez, that maybe he does do some maneuvering here and there. But in recent news, and we all know that Canelo Alvarez more than likely that his next fight is going to be over that one African cruiserweight, the recent WBC cruiserweight champion Unlunga Makabu, or Makabu, however you pronounce that gentleman's name. I don't personally have a problem with that fight because I think I understand why Saul Canelo Alvarez is doing it. You know, now some people, of course, may allege that he's maneuvering. I would personally like to see the Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, and David Benavidez fights as well. But Saul Canelo Alvarez, I believe that he does have a plan after the Ilunga Makabu fight. I think that he wants to title chase and get that title at cruiserweight, just to say that he won a title at cruiserweight, kind of like Roy Jones Jr. said that he won a title at heavyweight when it comes down to it, because at the end of the day, Saul Canelo Alvarez, once again, I've already explained this, Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, and he's already said this, he wants to be remembered as one of the all-time great boxers. And in my opinion, Saul Canelo Alvarez, he really has already gotten to that level. Once again, Saul Canelo Alvarez undoubtedly, just with what he has accomplished so far, he undoubtedly is within my top 50 boxers of all time. I don't even think that there's any debate about that. I mean, I truly believe, and this is my personal opinion, when you talk about just other Mexican boxers that I've personally seen, I think that when I take a look at Saul Canelo Alvarez, not only with some of his accomplishments, but his skill set and overall, you know, how intelligent of a boxer he tends to be. The only Mexican boxer, in my opinion, that would maybe still be over Saul Canelo Alvarez at this point in time in his career, in my opinion, would be that of a Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. I don't think that any other Mexican boxer or Mexican-American boxer that I've ever heard of or that I've ever seen within the past 100+ years, you know, pretty much throughout this society or ever since professional boxing, at least throughout our generations, has begun. I don't think all in all that I know another Mexican boxer besides maybe Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. that is debatably greater than Saul Canelo Alvarez. I don't think that Marquez is greater than Canelo. I don't think that Eric Morales is greater than Canelo. I don't think that Marco Antonio Barrera is greater than Canelo. I don't personally think overall that Oscar De La Hoya is greater than Canelo. And a certain amount of people overall may disagree. But Canelo Alvarez, all in all, he almost has 60 fights on his resume. Actually, if not 60 fights on his resume. This man is a 4-weight division champion. He has won the majority of the A-grade fights in his career. Now, of course, a certain amount of people may say, well, he still has to face Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, and David Benavidez. And as much as I would love to see those fights, and I do think that maybe those fights have to happen a little bit later on down the line, Saul Canelo Alvarez, at least in recent news, it sounds like after the Ilunga Makabu fight, he may go after actually the light heavyweight division, at least trying to unify it. And I don't think that that's a bad plan at all. I think all in all that if Saul Canelo Alvarez were able to unify the light heavyweight division, a division to where not only they have A-plus punchers, every single one of the champions there are debatably A-grade punchers, but they're bigger than Saul Canelo Alvarez. And I think that if Saul Canelo Alvarez can unify that division, it is going to make him overall really that much higher of a fighter in terms of the all-time grade rankings. If Saul Canelo Alvarez was able to do that, I mean, I don't know personally exactly where I would rank him on my all-time list, but he would have to go up on my list at least a little bit. As of right now, Saul Canelo Alvarez is at least within my top 40 at least. Probably top 30 to be quite honest with you. I think that Saul Canelo Alvarez, that he's somewhat on that Andre Ward, Bernard Hopkins level as of right now. Because I would, you know, and Joe Calzaghe, you know, if I want to, you know, put him there as well, I would say that those guys, they're somewhat on a similar level. And I would say that Saul Canelo Alvarez, he's about on that level right now, in my opinion. But he is going to have to consistently face A-grade fighters like he's been doing, in my opinion, at least usually throughout his career, to prove to me that maybe one day he can get on that top 15, the top 10 level. And I do think that he does have an opportunity to possibly do that. So we'll just see where Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez goes. But anyways, this is going to be very, very interesting to see from Boxing Ego, because of course he is going to allege that Saul Canelo Alvarez is going to avoid that of an Artur Beterbiev, and who knows, maybe Saul Canelo Alvarez will not be interested in the Artur Beterbiev fight, maybe he'll go straight for him. But personally, what do I think that Saul Canelo Alvarez is going to do? I personally believe that after the Ilunga Makabu fight, I believe that Canelo more than likely will get past Makabu, and then after that fight, I think more than likely he will probably go after that of Joe Smith Jr. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that fight, and I'll explain why in this video. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what Mr. Ego has to say.
Bad news. Team Canelo, it is confirmed they have not reached out as of yet with Artur Beterbiev's people, per Beterbiev's current manager, Bob Arum. It looks like Ego Stradamus strikes again. Stay tuned.
Mr. Ego Stradamus. You know what this man reminds me of? Now, maybe he gets more predictions right than what I'm giving him credit for. I'm not sure, because I don't watch his channel, severely when it comes down to it. Or, I have not reviewed a severe amount of his, videos, maybe like I have some of the other channels. But when it comes down to it, all in all, it's just interesting. You know who Boxing Ego reminds me of? Because he says that he always, gets every prediction correct. But I haven't personally seen it for myself. He reminds me of that one dude, who the hell's the dude with the 3 sons in basketball? LeVar Ball. That's his name. The dude with the corn-colored teeth. The dude that goes on ESPN First Take says overall that he can beat Michael Jordan in a 1v1. Goes on ESPN First Take, says, I'd never lose to Michael Jordan in a 1v1. I've never lost. That's who Ego reminds me of. It's like he always brags about how he has these Nostradamus predictions, but I ain't personally never seen them, at least from my own hand. I'm not saying that he don't get a couple predictions right here and there, but I mean, come on. Really, you're getting every single prediction right? Like I said, it's hard for me to believe that a person that got the Tyson Fury, a person that was one of these idiots that was alleging that Tyson Fury was putting, shit in his gloves and overall egg weights in the gloves and all this other bullshit. I have a hard time believing that you're just getting all this shit right on point, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, let's continue.
Man, I'm on top of my game. What up, Fight World? It's your boy, Ego. Bob Arum says, quote, there haven't been any real conversations for Canelo Alvarez, baby, to fight Artur Beterbiev. I think that they might want to fight Joe Smith Jr. next and then go towards Beterbiev to unify the titles. They sort of hinted at that. Bob Arum says this in a new exclusive interview. Now, the great Ego Stradamus strikes again. I made posts, as you see.
So you basically just called yourself Nostradamus, a person that gets every prediction correct. You must know the future. I don't really know the legend of Nostradamus or anything like that, but from what I've heard, I'm guessing that just must be it. Did you really predict overall Saul Canelo Alvarez not only to face Ilunga Makabu next, but overall for him to face Joe Smith Jr. next? Because that's what I'm predicting when it comes down to it. And I think that that is more than likely the correct move, especially if he is going to go unify the 175-pound division. I think that Joe Smith Jr. is a good reintroduction to the 175-pound division. I think Ilunga Makabu, he's a person that, he's decently powerful, so that'll be a decent fight. He'll probably even be a little bit heavier than that of a Joe Smith Jr. and some of the other light heavyweights. And on top of that, he has very decent power. So that's a good, fight to get adjusted to. And on top of that, it's a title chase for history. Canelo would be, one of the only people in history to win titles at 154, 160, 168, 175, and then at 200 pounds, if that is where the limit is being held at, or at least at the cruiserweight division. So, of course, that is something really, really special, because not a lot of fighters have done that in history, of course, that have been able to jump up the weight divisions like that. So I think the Ilunga Makabu fight, I actually personally think that is the correct move next, because I think that it's a great chase for history. After that, I think that the perfect matchup for Canelo, at least, would be a Joe Smith Jr., at least just in terms of getting him adjusted and all in all, just him probably more than likely getting used to the light heavyweight's powers and the skill set. Because I don't think Joe Smith Jr. is necessarily an A-grade fighter, but I do think that he's a decent fighter. He does have some decent wins in his career. And on top of that, Joe Smith is a dude that has A-grade power. That dude can knock, he can knock your goddamn lights out if he hits you correctly. I mean, shit, take a look at what he did to Artur Alvarez and Bernard Hopkins. Knocked that dude out the goddamn ring.
This is a tweet from me, and this is from today. Just did this. This interview is recent as well. Before that, the great Ego Stradamus, December 18th, I said Follow me at Boxing Ego. It's funny, I see comments that are saying that Beterbiev has no chance and can't beat Canelo. So why not cancel the MacBook Air fight that no...
Well, of course, Artur Beterbiev has a chance to beat Canelo. And I think that Artur Beterbiev, that him and Dimitri Bivol, I truly believe that them out of any other boxers within those weight classes, I believe that those are the two boxers basically on the planet that they have the best chance over Saul Canelo Alvarez. I don't think that there's any other boxers, even Andre or Benavidez or Charlo, even though they're decently talented, I just think that they're near Canelo Alvarez the same weight and size. And I think, to be honest with you, this is my personal opinion. If you're going to beat Saul Canelo Alvarez, you either have to have such an extraordinary skill set, like on the Floyd Mayweather Jr. level or something like a sort, and I don't see that from Andre, Charlo, or Benavidez. Or you not only are you going to have a decent skill set, but you're going to have some physical advantages over him. It's kind of like when you take a look at some of the all-time great fighters, whether it be Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, or even some of the great fighters of today that maybe have not made it to the all-time great level yet, but you can tell they're next level, like a Devonta Tank Davis or maybe Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, of course, he lost that Teofimo Lopez fight, but you know, there's a reason why he lost to Teofimo Lopez and not like, say, Gary Russell Jr. and a couple of those other fighters. Because the only way those fighters, in my opinion, are more than likely going to lose is if they face someone that has such a great skill set, or on top of that, when it comes down to they have a decent skill set, but on top of that, they're also bigger. You know, that's why Saul Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, at least compared to a lot of other boxers out there, he's just on a whole nother level.
One requested or wants to see, and then fight Beterbiev instead. You'll get the credit because Beterbiev is a unified champion, 17-0.
Of course he'll get the credit, but the Artur Beterbiev fight can happen next year. Well, of course it's going to happen, next year, because Canelo, of course, ain't going to fight again, this year. But when it comes down to it all in all, these guys, they really, really, really do not want Saul Canelo Alvarez to face Makabu. And the main reason why, we all know the reason why that is, because they don't want him to become a 5-weight division champion. Because they know if Saul Canelo Alvarez becomes a champion at the cruiserweight division, people are going to look at that and say, wow, he basically almost just kind of pulled off a Roy Jones Jr., where he's a person that started off at 154 and he was able to go to a weight class to where he was pretty decently, outsized against, and he was able to win a title there. They know that they're going to look at it like that. Now, whether you think it's on the same level or not, that's your opinion. But that's what a certain amount of people are going to look at it as. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with Canelo going after cruiserweight. It is what it is. Once again, is Ilunga Makabu, in my opinion, an A-grade fighter? No. And once again, a certain amount of people that come to my channel, especially because I have so many Saul Canelo Alvarez videos out as of recent, they probably think that I'm some Saul Canelo Alvarez major fanboy. And I can promise you that I'm not. I just have a great amount of respect for Saul Canelo Alvarez, just like I would any of the other all-time great fighters, because I do believe that Saul Canelo Alvarez is very special. I do believe that he is an all-time great fighter. I think that him, debatably Terrence Bud Crawford or Errol Spence Jr., whoever were to win that mega fight. Of course, you have Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. They're decently great fighters. We'll see who could potentially win that showdown. Devonta Tank Davis, I think, can eventually get to that level. It's a really big treat overall watching any of those fighters, because every time I watch those fighters, Vasyl Lomachenko to a degree, but he did lose that last big fight against Teofimo Lopez. All those fighters that I just mentioned, you can tell that those fighters, all in all, they're somewhat on a different level. It just is what it is.
17, all stoppages, you'll be the first to disrupt that. So I said that, and I doubled down on it. As you guys see in this tweet, about a week later, after Beterbiev beat Marcus Brown, an Olympian, by stoppage, I said, it's funny, I still see comments that Beterbiev looked bad, he looked vulnerable, he looked very beatable, etc., and Canelo can knock him out, and it'll be he'll beat him easy. So, with these types of comments,
I don't know if Saul Canelo Alvarez beats Artur Beterbiev easy. Would I personally favor him over Artur Beterbiev? I probably would, but what I'll say is this. Saul Canelo Alvarez, in order to beat Artur Beterbiev, he's going to have a hell of a preparation. And that's why, in my opinion, it would be the smartest idea to go after Joe Smith Jr. first. Because that at least is going to get you more adjusted to the size and the power of Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. Actually, it may behoove Saul Canelo Alvarez to go after Artur Beterbiev next after Joe Smith Jr. instead of Dimitri Bivol, because Dimitri Bivol is a person that he may be possibly more challenging for him. I don't think he has necessarily the same powers in Artur Beterbiev, but Dimitri Bivol, what I will say about him is this: very quick feet, very fast hands. He's a person that So Canelo Alvarez, and on top of that, he's a very decent athlete. So he does have decent punching power at his best. So Canelo Alvarez, he would have to watch out in both of those fights.
How much do you want to bet that Canelo won't abandon his plans to fight Makbuk Air to fight Beterbiev next? So what are you saying? Hashtag ego.
No shit. Why the hell would he? Once again, why the hell overall would he, give up the opportunity to face Lunga Makabu? Once again, that's a title chase for history. Once again, there's certain people that go up the weight divisions, and in my opinion, winning a belt there is not really a super huge deal because it wasn't over really that great of a fighter. Like when Mikey Garcia fought Sergey Lipinets at 140, that's understandable because no one thought Sergey Lipinets was an A-grade fighter. And on top of that, Mikey is not super duper outsized against that guy. They're pretty much the same size. In fact, Mikey may have even been a little bit bigger. But, when it comes down to it all in all, that's something to where we take a look at it and say, okay, that's not super duper special. But when Canelo Alvarez, who's really a natural 160, maybe 168 pounder at most, when he's going up all the way to cruiserweight, if there is going to be that at the 200-pound weight class, but even if it's possibly not, the fact that he's able to go in there against a decently bigger guy than Lunga Makabu. Now, some people, of course, may say, well, he's seen that height and reach before. Yes, but I don't know if you've ever seen that height and reach before with that type of power and that type of size. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how Saul Canelo Alvarez handles that. And on top of that, I think that it's a great introductory fight to also get used to some of the elite light heavyweights' power, because Makabu really can punch.
And still, I make boxing look pretty. I make it look good. So these are the statements I've made. Fast forward to the future, Bob Arum's doing interviews saying there haven't been any conversations on our side, and he's working with Beterbiev and his people to make the Canelo fight. So he's hinting that Canelo could opt to fight Joe Smith Jr., who didn't look good. And I love Joe Smith Jr. I've always stated that. I like him. But he didn't look good in that fight that he had. Vacheslav, I'm not good with people's names, but Joe Smith.
I would agree with that. I think that Joe Smith Jr. actually in that last fight, if you personally seen it, it actually was a very, very entertaining fight. It was a great fight. I personally thought that Joe Smith Jr. lost that fight against that one Russian fighter. He did end up getting the decision. I personally think that it was because of home soil, but it is what it is. But actually, all in all, when things end up like that, or, with Joe Smith Jr. as the champion, although it kind of sucks, of course, for that one Russian fighter, I think that Canelo versus Joe Smith Jr. actually, all in all, is a better fight. Because that one dude, Vlasov, I don't think that he would have had the power, and I don't think that he would have had the boxing ability to beat someone like a Saul Canelo Alvarez. I just think that he would have been too big, and his power overall would not really carried over to beat Canelo, and I think that Canelo just would have been too good for him. But Joe Smith, he's not a person that, in my opinion, is an A-grade fighter. He's not a person that has A-grade skills. But he's a person that has a hell of a lot of power, that he at least has A-grade punching power, if not A-plus punching power. Joe Smith is, his punches are nothing to mess around with. Like I said, he'll turn your lights out.
Junior, let me get the guy's name so I can announce it correctly. So, Vaslav, Maxim, this is the fight. He didn't look great in this fight, if you go back and watch it. So, what a coincidence. And then he fought Caleb Johnson. And
no, it's not really a coincidence. Is Canelo Alvarez more than likely getting adjusted to the light heavyweight division so he can possibly set up a super fight with that of Artur Beterbiev or Dimitri Bivol? And if I'm wrong about that, then I'm wrong. But we'll see.
He won, and I don't know if he looked at...
But of course, this man, Ego Stradamus, he apparently knows all. So I should be incorrect at the end of the day. We'll see what happens.
Great in this fight. His last, real standout performances were Leader Alvarez and then the Jesse Hart fight. So why would Canelo want to fight Joe Smith Jr. at this point? So it's very clear to me to see the games that Canelo is playing.
If Canelo Alvarez is trying to unify the light heavyweight division, why do you necessarily have a problem with that? Bob Arum basically said that he was interested in facing Joe Smith Jr. and then going after Artur Beterbiev. So once again, let's give Canelo the opportunity to at least possibly go after an Artur Beterbiev. We'll see what happens.
And his team is playing.
Now, once again, it'd be different if Saul Canelo Alvarez was a Gervonta Tank Davis or Mikey Garcia, where he's clearly slithering in and out of these divisions and he's not facing any of these A-grade fighters. But when it comes down to it, and I know I'm going to get some Gervonta Tank Davis fanboys on my ass, it is what it is. I like Gervonta Tank Davis. I think that he's a tremendous, star. I think that he's even a superstar. But let's be real, Mr. Isaac Cruz and Mario Barrios, they're not the creme de la creme. I think Leo said it. Cruz was a decent A-grade win, but ever since then, and really also for the rest of your career, you haven't really fought anyone that's been A-grade. You know, the Vasily Lomachenkos, the Devin Haney's, and, you know, overall George Kambosis's, and, you know, the Shakur Stevensons, those are the guys that are A-grade. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't heard Gervonta Tank Davis interested in any of those fights, besides maybe George Kambosos. But it is what it is. And that's not even including Regis Prograis, Josh Taylor, and Jose Ramirez, because Gervonta can somewhat handle himself there.
Around boxing and, you know, attempting to do some sort of Jedi mind trick as if these are the fights that the fans have been requesting and begging of, right? And that's not the reality. And like I said, it's funny to me that we're in such a unique space in the world of boxing, and it's ever-changing. You got people who are saying Beterbiev looked totally beatable and horrible. So why not age him out further, and why doesn't Canelo fight him straight away? Because I'm being honest, I think that's a dangerous fight for both guys. And
I think that it is as well. So basically, Ego, what you just admitted is that potentially if Canelo does beat Artur Beterbiev, all you're basically going to say is that he was 37 years old. Isn't that a bitch when it comes down to it that Canelo apparently is fighting all these alleged old guys? You know, I just overall made a comment overall recently on this Facebook poll. I'm in this one Facebook boxing group. And, you know, Eric Morales, who's acting like a salty bitch towards Canelo Alvarez right now because he already knows that Canelo more than likely surpassed him. There's no disrespect. It just is what it is. But there's a reason why, you know, Eric Morales sometimes lost some of the bigger fights in his career. And he did win some of the bigger fights as well. But he usually lost the trilogies in his career like to Manny Pacquiao or Marco Antonio Barrera. So it is what it is. You know, so Canelo Alvarez has beaten a lot of the competition that he has faced. It is what it is.
If people disagree, then why are we not pushing for these fights? In addition...
But like I said, this is, you know, Dante's Vaccination, for example, who's very similar to Boxing Ego. He'll basically say all in all that Saul Canelo Alvarez, he only beats great fighters when they're old, like Gennady Golovkin and Miguel Cotto. Both of those guys were very decent fighters when Canelo fought them. It just is what it is. But then your Denis Ugas beats a Manny Pacquiao who had a 2-year layoff, was like 43 years old. And what did Dante's Vaccination say? Oh, well, we have to give your Denis Ugas credit for this. So we, as Dante would say, we all know what time it is. It is what it is. Once again, you have to have a logical and objective spin on things.
I told you, Canelo's history shows these patterns. Guys coming off incredulous wins, that's not usually when Canelo will pick you. He'll pick you when you're on a performance where you almost lost or almost got stopped or people felt the fight was a robbery. Look at the fight.
So then what about Araceli Lara, Gennady Golovkin, Miguel Cotto, you know, Sergey Kovalev? All those fighters were coming off of very decent performances. You know, even Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders, I'm so tired of hearing this narrative when it comes down to it because it just doesn't make any sense. These people overall are trying to act like he fights them exactly off of their worst performance. Oh, that is a bunch of horse shit. Now, Billy Joe Saunders in his fight overall before the Martin Murray one, he didn't look super duper impressive, but then he fought Martin Murray and completely dominated him. Now, Martin Murray, in my opinion, is not an A-grade fighter, but at the end of the day, Billy Joe Saunders still put on a decent performance. And once again, if you're also alleging that, you know, Saul Canelo Alvarez, that he's avoiding Charlo and Andre, well, what's the big problem with him not facing Jamal Charlo then right now? Because didn't Jamal Charlo look like absolute shit in his last fight? Like, once again, these guys use that narrative to basically tear down any fight that he is going to have. It does, like I said, it doesn't matter what Saul Canelo Alvarez, who he's going to face next. He could face Alexander Usyk. It's not going to matter.
Hey, when did he fight against Caleb Smith? He fought Caleb Smith, and I could prove everything. I'm ready to back up every word I'm saying. He fought Caleb Smith on the heels of the John Ryder performance, where Caleb Smith, he really lost that fight to John Ryder, and he even got booed in his hometown. So that's how you...
I don't even personally remember that fight. I would have to check it out. But at the end of the day, Caleb Smith, or Callum Smith, I believe is his name, you know, he's still a decent fighter, and he was a Ring Magazine champion. So it is what it is.
You know, when the crowd turns on you, similar to Teofimo Lopez versus Camboso, when Teo, being from New York, that's what he says, when he's claiming he beat Cambosos and the crowd booed him, that's what they think about you. Same thing happened in Liverpool or wherever Caleb Smith is from. And guess what? off of the John Ryder fight.
Like I said, but when it comes down to but Gervonta Tank Davis, he'll fight Mario Barrios almost, when Mario Barrios looked like complete shit against that one fighter. I don't even remember the dude's name. He was Russian, and it probably should have been a draw, but because the Russian didn't fight too intelligently and got knocked down a couple times in that fight, Barrios got overall, the home decision win slightly. But, they won't mention that. If you're going to make the point that Canelo fought, Callum Smith overall, off of his worst performance when it comes down to it, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Now, once again, I'd have to see the John Ryder fight because I never personally watched it. But when it comes down to, like I said, there's still many other fighters that Canelo fought that he fought coming off of decently impressive performances, like Caleb Plant or Billy Joe Saunders or, Sergey Kovalev, even though he had a couple tough rounds against Anthony Art, but he was an undefeated prospect at the time, and Sergey Kovalev was, I believe, the WBO champion. So it is what it is.
Right. Facts over feelings. That's when Canelo fought him. And if you look at the dates, one was in 11, so November 2019, and he was out of the ring for a year and a month when he fought Canelo. So not only is he coming off a performance where he really should have lost his belts to John Ryder, as you see, he was also a year and a month inactive. Versus...
Okay, once again, if you're going to make that fight with Callum Smith, you can say that all you want to. I don't have a problem with that. But then are you also going to say anything about Terence Bud Crawford when he defeated Yuriorkis Gamboa when Yuriorkis Gamboa had a year layoff? It just is what it is, and I highly doubt it, but it is whatever. But Callum Smith, at the end of the day, once again, a year layoff to me, that's not really something that, is just excuse-worthy. Now, if you have like a 2 to 3 year layoff, then I can maybe understand. A year layoff, don't get me wrong, it still is a long time, but you don't get your ass completely whooped just because you were outside of the ring 1 year. Like, it just doesn't happen. It is what it is. Guillermo Rigondeaux didn't get his ass completely whooped overall against Vasyl Lomachenko because he was out for a year. He got his ass completely whooped because he was fighting a fighter that was that much more skilled. It is what it is. So these guys can make all these excuses all they want to. Even Yuriorkis Gamboa, when he fought Terence Bud Crawford, he was out for a year. He gave Terence Bud Crawford hell. And Terence Bud Crawford, when it comes down to it, Terence Bud Crawford is one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world ever since that fight.
Guy like Beterbiev just stopped Marcus Brown, and as I showed you, people are saying he looked horrible, and which I don't believe. I think he got...
I don't believe that he looked horrible either. I believe that it was the best performance of his career, especially over a decent fighter in Marcus Brown.
Better as he got a nasty cut. That shows me he's still a problem, right? And this is what people like to do. They want to talk. They want to talk about it, and they act like they want to be about it, but they don't want to see about it. That's not me. I think Beterbiev is a much better fight.
No, well, you make up certain narratives once again overall, but you don't want to see about Mr. Gervonta Tank Davis. You talk shit about Teofimo Lopez's or Canelo's or Vasyl Lomachenko's or let's be real. Let's just lay it out plain and simple. Basically, anyone who's not a Black American fighter or a Black fighter period that you like when it comes down to it, you'll basically overall be and see about it then. But then when it comes overall to a certain fighter that you may like, let's be real, of a specific demographic, all of a sudden you ain't being about it and seeing about it then. You still, all in all, are, bitching, moaning, and complaining overall and fangirling about Gervonta Tank Davis and pretty much how those pay-per-view numbers tanked. It is what it is. And you can talk about how the venue, overall at the fight did, damn near 4 million. I'm telling you this right now, those pay-per-view numbers tanked because ain't nobody want to see Gervonta Tank Davis versus Isaac Cruz.
Then MacBook Air. I don't care about Canelo moving to cruiserweight. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Why does Canelo, the games...
Well, you say that over at the end of the day, but the history books are going to tell different. And so Canelo Alvarez understands that.
The walls are closing in. That's all I can say. Canelo doesn't typically fight guys coming off of these type of performances. And if you're looking for a threat, you're looking for a danger, guys like Beterbiev, Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, and David Benavidez all represent that. So why...
They all represent that. Isn't Jamal Charlo right now coming off of a shit performance? Didn't he look like complete shit against a C- fighter against Juan Macias Montiel, who the biggest win of his career is over a washed-up James Kirkland who has a chin of wet tissue paper anyway? It's like, come on, man. What are we really talking about here? And Demetrius Andrade wasn't super duper impressive In his last fight, he ended up getting a second round TKO, I believe. So that's a good on him. But his performance before that, it was really lackluster.
You need to go to cruiserweight, some foreign division for this makeshift history, instead of doing what the fans are asking. Max Kellerman, he's a boxing personality if you don't want to take my word for it. Max Kellerman on his own.
Right, so if you're going to make that point about Saul Canelo Alvarez, why don't you bitch, moan, and complain about Gervonta Tank Davis? Gervonta, why are you not taking the fights that the fans want to see? Why are you not facing Vasily Lomachenko? Why are you not facing Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, Josh Taylor, Regis Prograis, Jose Ramirez? I haven't heard Gervonta Tank Davis call out one of these fighters. At least not when they look super duper dangerous, So it is what it is. Once again, you're trying to make this point about Saul Canelo Alvarez, but you're not going to make this point about Gervonta Tank Davis or Deontay Wilder or, let's be real, certain fighters that have the complexion for your protection. It is what it is. It can work both ways depending on what media outlet, the person is about, or, what demographic is talking. So it is what it is, or just depending on the individual.
Show Max on Boxing said his favorite fight is Canelo versus Beterbiev. He said that's a real good old school type of fight. So, like I said, Ego Stradamus strikes again. I'm the best in the business. A lot of people, they'll say that Beterbiev looks sweet and he looked beatable and age is catching up with him. But why doesn't Canelo fight him?
So at this current moment in time, what you're really saying is that Beterbiev is a great fighter. And I agree with you. And what you're saying is that at this current moment in time, he didn't look too beatable in that last fight, even at 36 years old. So that means if Saul Canelo Alvarez faces him next year, there'll be no excuses from you. Is that correct? I highly doubt it, but we'll see what happens.
He's ripe for the picking. He's already 30. Beterbiev is, 30-something. So you can see what Canelo's doing. Beterbiev right now is 30.
Once again, this narrative that Saul Canelo Alvarez, he only fights people when they're old or when they're washed up or off their worst performances, all that is a bunch of horse shit. He fought Miguel Cotto, he fought Sergey Kovalev, he fought Billy Joe Saunders, he fought Caleb Plant, he fought Gennady Golovkin, he fought Araceli Lara, he fought Austin Trout, all usually coming off of a very, very decent performance. Just stop, man.
He's 6 years old, right? So wait for more inactivity or dormant type of fights, and then maybe get him when he's 40, something like that. It's very easy. But a guy who has 17-0 and he's never been stopped, he's been dropped before. I've seen it, but he got back up and showed he was a warrior. 17-0, all 17 by knockout. You can't tell me that's not a threat, especially if you're telling me that a guy like Makbouk Air is supposed to be the biggest threat, because once you get beyond the action...
No, Makabu is not supposed to be the biggest threat. But what he is a chase for history. And the reason why it has more meaning than that of a Mikey Garcia going after Sergey Lipinets or someone like that is because Saul Canelo Alvarez, he's never even supposed to be at the cruiserweight division. Mikey is someone all in all, like for example, if he faces someone at 140 that's a champion, he can certainly compete there because his weight can translate there. His physical dimensions can translate there. Canelo is a dude that is 5'9", 5'10" at most, with a 71-inch reach. So like I said, him going up to cruiserweight and possibly winning a title there, I understand overall why he's taking the fight. It is what it is.
Size differential, you'll see he's a limited fighter. Tony Bellew's a former lightweight that knocked him out, right? He's already been knocked out in his pro debut. So the games Canelo's playing are definitely coming to an end. We know the most dangerous options and really the best fights. It's not just...
The most dangerous options are Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol. And I believe that Canelo Alvarez eventually will work up to them. But we'll see what happens. And I believe that that's why after Ilunga Makabu, or Makabu, however you pronounce his name, more than likely he is going to face Joe Smith Jr. to get a reintroduction into the light heavyweight division. And that's a decent fight.
It's dangerous. Like, they're the better fight. Beterbiev and guys like David Benavidez. But notice Canelo's team, every single time it's one of these better fights. Canelo's supposed to be the people's champ in the face of boxing. Every time it's one of these better fights, David...
He is the face of boxing. Remember what you said earlier in the video, Ego? Facts over feelings? Remember his last pay-per-view numbers? When it comes down to it, they were 900,000. Now, once again, I'm not the Saul Canelo Alvarez fanboy, but these narratives that these guys try to promote is just so obnoxious. because these guys all in all, it's very clear what their agenda is. He's allegedly the face of boxing. What you mean allegedly the face of boxing? The dude against Caleb Plant did 900,000 pay-per-view buys. Is any other fighter, active for current fighter in boxing, doing those type of numbers? I'm talking about a real deal fighter. So not someone like a Jake Paul, or Logan Paul, in exhibitions or something like that. What other boxer is doing that today? No other boxer is doing that today. None. Not Gervonta Tank Davis, not Errol Spence Jr., certainly not Terrence Bud Crawford, not even Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury, not Alexander Usyk, not, any of these other guys. Canelo Alvarez, once again, and I've already said this, you don't get 900,000 pay-per-view buys because you're facing bums. There's a reason why Isaac Cruz versus Gervonta Tank Davis, they completely tanked in the numbers because people intuitively know, especially if they know shit about boxing, what's a good fight and what's not a good fight. So just stop, man.
Benavidez Beterbiev, Canelo and his team try to find a way to weasel out of it and say, oh, Benavidez, he doesn't mean much, he's useless. Video coming soon. Saying, oh, what's the point of...
Well, of course, I think all in all that Benavidez brings something to the table. But like I said, if Canelo is going to unify the 175-pound division, there are some real competitors there. Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev especially, those boys are no joke.
Fighting him. So what's the point of fighting Yildirim or Rocky Fielding? What's the point of fighting...
Yes, of course, all in all, when it comes down to it, Yildirim and Rocky Fielding. But what's interesting when it comes down to it? These guys always allege that Canelo Alvarez faces C-class fighters. But you know what? I just noticed something similar that Ego said and Dante's Boxing Nation said. They always put Rocky Fielding and Avni Yildirim in the same sentence, but they won't put Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, or Caleb Plant in the same sentence. So what does that tell you? They know that Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, and Callum Smith, they were legitimate fighters. We all know that Rocky Fielding and Avni Yildirim, those guys are C-grade fighters. There's no doubt about that when it comes down to it. But those other guys that Canelo fought, they were legitimate fighters. It is what it is. Now, if you want to allege that Jamal Charlo, Andre, and David Benavidez, that they're more talented, that's up to you. But personally, once again, I've already said this, they're about on the same level in my opinion. Do we really think that Jamal Charlo, taking a look at, take a look at his fight over Matt Korobov, for example. Is that a fighter that, in your opinion, is a 50-50 fight with Saul Canelo Alvarez? I'm not saying that I don't want to see the fight happen. Of course, I would love to see the fight happen. Styles make fights, so you never know at the end of the day. But when it comes down to it, I can't get after Saul Canelo Alvarez a whole lot if he is really going to try to unify the 175-pound division and face someone like an Artur Beterbiev or even a Joe Smith Jr. and especially Dimitri Bivol. If he really is going to face those fighters, I can't criticize Canelo Alvarez to that great of a degree because in my opinion, Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol, they're bigger threats to Canelo Alvarez than what Jamal Charlo, Demetrius Andrade, or David Benavidez have ever been close to to Canelo Alvarez at least. So it is what it is.
Book air instead of Beterbiev. And then on top of that, Canelo's team capped. And I've made videos. It's all, don't make me pull it up and go into the crates. It's all available. Canelo's team said that they thought Kovalev at the 2019 when they fought him was the best light heavyweight. And I would have favored easily Beterbiev to beat him at that given moment.
Well, I would agree with that when it comes down to it. I don't think that Sergey Kovalev was the best light heavyweight at the time. But I would still say that he was an A- fighter. He was coming off of 2 very decent wins. He got revenge in a very dominant performance overall where he got a little bit of his confidence back over Eleider Alvarez. And then, of course, after that, he ended up beating the undefeated, decently talented prospect and even knocked him out, Anthony Yard. That's when Canelo Alvarez beat Sergey Kovalev. Now, if you let these people tell it, overall, they'll say, oh, well, Canelo, he fought when Sergey Kovalev nearly got knocked out. Like, come on, dude. Yeah, Sergey Kovalev had he had a little bit of trouble in that fight against Anthony Yard. And one of those rounds, it did look like maybe Kovalev was going to get put away. But all in all, it's not like Kovalev, was almost completely losing the fight. He was dominating the fight. He had one round where he was in a little bit of trouble, or decent trouble if you want to say that. And then after that, he knocked him out. It just is what it is. Kovalev was still bigger than Canelo. He outreached him. He had bigger height. He probably had more power than Saul Canelo Alvarez. Was he the same fighter he was when he fought Andre Ward? No, of course not, but he still was a decent fighter.
And Beterbiev already beat him twice in the amateurs. So the walls are closing in for the lives.
Right, but that's not really the greatest point that you can make. Once again, that's like a really idiot point to make. So many people all in all always say that it's great to have a great amateur background, but just because someone overall beats someone in the amateurs doesn't really mean all in all that they're going to beat them in the professionals. Like Miguel Cotto, for example, there was this one Uzbekistan fighter, I believe, that he fought early on in the 2000s. He ended up beating Miguel Cotto, I believe, once or twice in the amateurs. Miguel Cotto fought him, knocked him out within 7 rounds. Never was heard from again. So just because someone all in all has a great amateur background doesn't always mean that they're going to be a great professional fighter. It can mean that, but it doesn't always mean that. So it just is what it is. Anyway. But just overall, to talk about it, do I believe that Artur Beterbiev would have beat Sergey Kovalev at that point in time? Yes, personally, I do.
This team also said they sent Beterbiev an offer. Beterbiev responded, I could destroy you just like that. In the words of the Golden Child. Beterbiev responds to Canelo. Let's try that out. Because Canelo said that he sent Beterbiev an offer, and then Beterbiev immediately came out in his team. Look, so that's what was stated by Canelo's team, that Beterbiev turned down the fight. Beterbiev contradicts that. And look, he said, I want Saul Canelo Alvarez next. Right? And he also said, I didn't turn down no fight with him.
Right, but, once again, Canelo Alvarez, at least before, he did somewhat have a disinterest at 175. But overall, is he going to have an interest in 2022? It'll be very interesting. And I do personally believe that he more than likely is going to go, or at least try to be undisputed at 175. But we'll see what happens.
Right? So he refuted what Canelo has said. It's all, listen, here, I did a video a day before my birthday, March 24th. Artur Beterbiev finally admits Canelo team never sent him an offer. Boom. Told you I could find it. I'm the GOAT. If you want more of this GOAT.
This dude, goddamn, I swear to God, he got his YouTube channel name right. Boxing Eagle, I tell you what.
Go talk, subscribe to the channel. I'm out. The future.
Anyways, that's really about it for today. But we'll see what happens. What do I personally believe is going to happen next? I do believe that Canelo more than likely is going to go after Ilunga Makabu, or Makabu, however you pronounce the gentleman's name. I believe that that is the correct move, because I believe it is a chase for history. And then after that, I believe all in all that more than likely he's going to face a Joe Smith Jr. And then after that, we'll just have to see what happens. Do I believe that he will go after an Artur Beterbiev or Dimitri Bivol? I think that it is very possible. But I'm not like Ego Stradamus here. I cannot predict the future. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, when it comes down to it, it should be very interesting. We will see what Saul Canelo Alvarez does. Like I said, after the Ilunga Makabu fight, he is going to have to face some real challengers. And I do think that Ilunga Makabu, I do think that he is a decent fight just because he is a cruiserweight fighter. But after that, he is going to have to face, if he is going to face people at light heavyweight, he's going to have to face one of the champions there, no doubt about it. Because if he doesn't, then all in all, of course, that would be a real sign that Canelo Alvarez is not interested in facing some of the A-grade fighters. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.